The warning lights flashed red across the bridge of Kepler Station. Commander Zethkar stood before the main screen, watching his world die below. Zarian Prime burned. The great cities that had stood for 1,000 years were now smoking ruins. The Devourers had come, and they were hungry. "Sir, we've lost contact with the surface colonies," reported his communications officer, Veltar. The insect-like alien's voice shook with fear. "The Devourers are consuming everything. Buildings, vehicles, even the ground itself." Car closed. His eyes. He had seen 17 worlds fall to these monsters. Each time, the story was the same. The Devourers would arrive in their biomechanical ships, land on the planet, and begin to eat. Not just the living things, but everything. They turned entire worlds into empty husks floating in space. "How long until they reach the orbital platforms?" Zethkar asked. 6 hours, maybe less, Veltar replied. "Their consumption rate is increasing. They're learning to eat faster with each world they take." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Galactic Confederation had thrown everything at the Devourers. Their best ships, their strongest warriors, their most advanced weapons. Nothing worked. The enemy adapted too quickly, learned too fast. They turned every attack into a lesson, every defeat into knowledge that made them stronger. "Sir," another officer called out, "Admiral Grixton is requesting all stations to prepare for Evacuation Protocol 7. Zethkar knew what Protocol 7 meant. It was the last resort. When all hope was gone, they would broadcast a distress call to every known species in the galaxy. They would ask for help from anyone who might listen, even though most civilizations had already been contacted. Most had refused to help, too afraid of the Devourers to risk their own worlds. "Tell the Admiral I understand," Zethkar said. "Begin the broadcast sequence." Veltar's many arms moved across his control panel. "Sir, the computer is asking which frequencies to include in the broadcast." "All of them," Zethkar replied without hesitation. "Every known communication channel, every emergency frequency. Even the old ones that haven't been used in decades." "Sir, that would include the human emergency channels." The bridge went quiet again. Everyone knew about humans. 50 years ago, they had been part of the Galactic Confederation. They were a young species, aggressive and unpredictable. They had strange ideas about warfare and never followed the accepted rules of engagement. When the Confederation tried to control them, the humans had fought back. The war that followed was brutal and short. The humans lost, and their species was declared extinct. Their worlds were left empty, their ships destroyed, their people scattered to the void. "The humans are gone, sir," Veltar said quietly. "Everyone knows that." "Maybe," Zethkar said. "But our ancestors used to believe in old gods who would come in times of great need. Perhaps there are still miracles left in this universe." The broadcast began. The message was simple. "This is Commander Zethkar of Kepler Station, Galactic. Confederation. We are under attack by an enemy that cannot be stopped. They are destroying everything in their path. If anyone receives this message, if anyone can help us, please respond. We are dying." The message went out on all frequencies, spreading across the galaxy at the speed of light. Would hear it in time to matter. Far away in the empty space between star systems, something did hear it. The USS Shadowhawk drifted in the darkness like a ghost. It had been floating there for 3 months, powered down to almost nothing, invisible to any sensors. The ship looked nothing like the vessels the galaxy once knew humanity to build. It was long and angular, covered in armor that seemed to bend. Light around it. Strange energy fields flickered along its hull, making it hard to look at directly. On the bridge, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, half his face covered in cybernetic implants that glowed with soft blue light. Scars crossed the other half of his face, telling stories of battles fought in the dark places of space. His hands, more machine than flesh now, rested on the arms of his chair as he listened to the alien distress call. "Captain," said Lieutenant. "Commander Lisa Grant, from her position at the communications station. We're receiving that broadcast on multiple frequencies. The signal is strong. They're really desperate." Morrison said nothing for a long moment. Round him, his crew waited, They were all like him now, enhanced beyond what normal humans could survive. Some had cybernetic limbs, others had genetic modifications that made them faster and stronger. All of them had been changed by the years of hiding in the dark spaces between stars. "Play it again," Morrison finally said. Grant activated the message. Zethkar's voice filled the bridge, speaking of death and destruction, of worlds consumed and hope lost. The galaxy was full of species crying for help as the Devourers spread across the stars like a plague. "They're the ones who tried to wipe us out," said Commander Alex Chen from his position at the tactical station. His eyes were completely artificial now, replaced with advanced sensors that could see across multiple spectrums. "Why should we care if they die? Because we're better than they are," Morrison replied. "And because those people down there didn't make the choice to attack us 50 years ago, they're just trying to survive." Grant turned in her chair to face him. "Jake, we've been running for 5 decades. We've built something here, something they can't touch. Why risk it all for aliens who would kill us if they knew we were still alive?" Morrison stood up from his chair. His enhanced body moved with perfect balance, every step calculated and precise. He walked to the main screen and looked out at the stars. "Because that's what humans do," he said. "We help, even when it's stupid, even when it gets us killed. It's who we are." He turned back to his crew. "Besides, we've been hiding long enough. So maybe it's time the galaxy remembered what humanity can do when we stop running." Major Kate Sullivan's voice came over the communication system from somewhere deep in the ship. "Captain, my infiltration teams are ready for deployment. Give us a target and we'll make it disappear." Ronald Ryan Hayes added his voice from the Marine Bay. "My people are getting restless, sir. They want to fight something that matters." Morrison smiled, and the cybernetic parts of his face made it look dangerous. "Signal the fleet. Tell all ships to begin power-up sequences. We're going back to war." "Oh, sir," Grant said carefully. "Are we sure about this? Once we reveal ourselves?" "There's no going back to hiding." Morrison looked at her, then at the rest of his crew. These people had followed him through hell. They'd survived when the rest of humanity was supposed to die. They had become something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. 50 years ago, they called us monsters, he said. They said we were too dangerous to live. Maybe they were right. Maybe we are monsters now. But if they want monsters, we'll give them monsters. Signal all ships. The Nightfall Protocol is now active. We're going home. Across the dark fleet, 12 ships began to wake up. Their engines came online, their weapons charged, their crews prepared for battle. They had been humanity's last hope once. They were the shadows between stars, the darkness that watched and waited. They were coming back, and the galaxy would never be the same. The space around Kepler Station began to ripple like water. Chief Science Officer Veltar watched his sensors with growing confusion. The readings made no sense. His instruments detected massive objects moving through space, but he could not see them. "Commander Zethkar, you need to see this," Veltar called across the bridge. His insect eyes focused on the data streaming across his screens. "Something is out there. Something big." Zethkar moved to stand behind Veltar's station. "What are you seeing?" "Gravity distortions. 12 of them, each one the size of a battleship. But there's nothing there. Our visual scanners show empty space. Could it be the Devourers using new technology?" Veltar's head shook back and forth. "No, sir. The Devourers bend gravity to consume matter. This is different. These distortions are moving in formation, like a fleet. They're heading toward the Devourer positions." On the surface of Zarian Prime, the Devourers continued their endless feeding. The creatures moved across the dying world like a living carpet, breaking down everything they touched into basic matter. Their biomechanical ships hung in orbit, processing the consumed material and growing larger with each passing hour. Then, the attacks began. The first Devourer ship simply vanished. One moment it was there, feeding from the planet below. The next moment, empty space remained. No explosion, no debris, no energy signature. It was just gone. The remaining Devourer vessels began to move, trying to form defensive positions. But their enemy was invisible. Another ship disappeared, then another. Each vanishing happened in complete silence. Leaving no trace behind inside the USS Shadowhawk, Captain Morrison watched the tactical display with satisfaction. His ship remained cloaked, bending light and gravity around itself to stay hidden. Around him, his bridge crew worked with mechanical precision. "Target destroyed," reported Commander Chen from his tactical station. The stealth torpedoes worked perfectly. They never saw it coming. Morrison nodded. The torpedoes were one of humanity's new weapons, developed during their years in exile. They moved through folded space, appearing inside enemy ships and detonating. Before anyone could react, "Major Sullivan, what's your team's status?" Morrison asked into his communicator. Sullivan's voice came back from somewhere deep in space. "We've planted charges on 3 more Devourer vessels. They think they're safe, but we're already inside their holes. Give the word and they'll be space dust." "Colonel Hayes, are your Marines ready for the next phase?" "Always ready, Captain," Hayes replied from the Marine Bay. "My people are getting excited. It's been too long since we had a real fight." Morrison turned to Lieutenant Commander Grant at the communications station. "Any response from the aliens? They're trying to contact?" "Us on all frequencies," Grant replied. "They know something is attacking the Devourers, but they can't figure out what." "Should I respond?" "Not yet. Let them wonder." The battle continued for 3 hours. The human fleet moved through the Devourer formation like sharks in dark water. They struck without warning and vanished before the enemy could respond. The biomechanical ships tried to adapt, changing their formations and sending out scout drones. But the humans had learned patience during their exile. They waited, watched, and chose their moments carefully. By the end, 8 of the 15 Devourer vessels were gone. The remaining 7 had retreated to the far side of the system, keeping close together and scanning space frantically for an enemy they could not see on Kepler Station. The alien command staff stared at their screens. In amazement, for the first time in months, the consumption of Zarian Prime had paused. "Sir," Veltar reported, "the Devourers are sending signals to each other. They seem confused and frightened." Commander Zethkar could hardly believe it. The Devourers had never shown fear before. They consumed worlds with the same mindless hunger that a fire consumed wood, but now they were acting like prey animals, huddled together for protection. "Whatever attacked them is still out there," Zethkar said. "Can we identify it?" "Negative, sir, but I'm detecting a single small craft approaching our station."
Oh.
Not using any stealth technology, they want us to see them coming. On the main screen, a small shuttle appeared. It looked nothing like any human ship the aliens remembered. The hull was smooth and black, covered in strange markings that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Energy fields flickered around it like living things. "They're requesting permission to dock," the communications officer reported. Zethkar hesitated. 50 years ago, humans had been the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They fought wars that other civilizations could not imagine, using tactics that broke every rule of civilized combat. If they had survived, if they had been hiding all this time, what had they become? Grant them docking permission, he decided. Let keep security teams ready. The shuttle docked at Kepler Station's main bay. The airlock cycled through its sequence, and the inner door opened. What stepped through made the alien guards take a step backward. The figure was clearly human in basic shape, but changed in ways that made him seem like something else entirely. Half of his face was covered in cybernetic implants that glowed with soft light. His left arm had been replaced with a mechanical limb that moved with perfect precision. Scars covered the visible parts of his skin, and his eyes held the look of someone who had seen too much death. Behind him came 2 more humans. A woman with silver hair and enhanced reflexes that made her movements seem too fast. A man whose eyes had been replaced with artificial sensors that tracked everything around him with machine-like focus. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Vessel Shadowhawk," the scarred man said in perfect Galactic standard language. "I believe you sent a distress call." Commander Zethkar entered the docking bay, flanked by his security team. He tried to project confidence, but the humans made him nervous. They stood too still, moved too precisely, and their enhanced bodies radiated a sense of controlled violence. "Captain Morrison," Zethkar said carefully, We were told that humanity was extinct. Morrison smiled, and the cybernetic parts of his face made the expression look dangerous. Reports of our death were greatly exaggerated. We've been busy. What do you want from us? Nothing, Morrison replied. We heard your call for help. We came to answer it. After what happened 50 years ago, why would you help us? Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer but somehow more frightening, because that's what humans do. We help people who need it, even people who tried to kill us. He gestured toward the main screen, where the image of Zarian Prime showed the paused destruction. Your Devourer problem is bigger than you know. They're not just consuming your worlds. They're learning from them. Every planet they eat makes them smarter, stronger, more dangerous. How do you know this? Because we've been watching them. We've been fighting them. In the dark spaces where no one else goes, we know what they are and what they want. Morrison stepped closer to Zethkar. But we can't do this alone. If you want to save your people, we're going to need to work together. The alien commander looked at the enhanced human before him. 50 years ago, his people had tried to destroy humanity because they were too dangerous. Now those same dangerous humans were offering to save them. What do you propose? Morrison's smile returned. We teach you to hunt in the shadows. We show you how to fight an enemy that adapts to everything you throw at it. And when the time comes, we take the fight to them. In the distance, alarms began to sound. The Devourers were moving again, but this time they were heading away from Zarian Prime. They were retreating, running from an enemy they could not see or understand. For the first time in months, Commander Zethkar felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. The meeting room on Kepler Station had been designed for diplomatic talks between different alien species. Now it hosted something that had never been planned for. Captain Morrison sat across from Commander Zethkar, with representatives from 12 different alien civilizations watching every word. Morrison had removed his tactical armor, but he still looked dangerous in his simple black uniform. The cybernetic implants on his face glowed softly in the dim light. His mechanical arm rested on the table, fingers drumming a slow rhythm on the metal surface. You want us to trust you? Said Ambassador Crixtel from the Hegemony Worlds. The tall, thin alien leaned forward, his 4 eyes fixed on Morrison. But you are the same species that refused to follow galactic law 50 years ago? We're never the same, Morrison replied calmly. 4 years ago we were young and stupid. We thought we could fight the whole galaxy and win. We were wrong. So what changed? Asked Dr. Yildiz from her seat near the back. The elderly alien had been one of the few to help human refugees during the war. She studied Morrison with scientific interest. Morrison's expression grew distant. We learned what it means to lose everything. We learned what it takes to survive. When the whole universe wants you dead, we learned that sometimes becoming a monster is the only way to protect what matters. He activated a small holographic projector on the table. Images appeared in the air, showing the human fleet's recent attacks on the Devourer ships. The aliens watched as enemy vessels simply vanished, consumed by weapons they could not see or understand. We've been fighting the Devourers for 10 years, Morrison continued. We know how they think, how they adapt, how they spread. Your conventional weapons won't work against them. They learn too fast, change too quickly. Zethkar leaned forward. What do you propose? A partnership. We teach you to fight like we do. Hit-and-run attacks, stealth operations, psychological warfare. In return, you give us something we've lost. What's that? A place to belong? The room fell silent. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The idea of working with humans again brought back memories of the war 50 years ago, when human tactics had been too brutal, too effective, too frightening. Ambassador Crixtel spoke first. What guarantee do we have that you won't turn on us again? Morrison smiled, and the cybernetic parts of his face made it look sharp. You don't. But right now, we're the only thing standing between you and extinction. The Devourers have consumed 47 worlds in the past year. At their current rate, they'll eat the entire galaxy in less than 50 years. He stood up and walked to the large window that showed Zarian Prime below. The planet still burned, but the consumption had stopped. The Devourers remained indefensive, Positions on the far side of the system? Look at your world down there, Morrison said. 3 days ago, you thought it was lost forever. Now the Devourers are hiding like scared children. That's what we can do for every world in the galaxy. Dr. Yildiz stood slowly. I remember treating human refugees during the war. Children mostly. Civilians who got caught in the fighting. They were just people, trying to live their lives. She looked around the room at the other representatives. These enhanced humans may look frightening, but they came here to help us. They could have stayed hidden forever, but they chose to answer our distress call. Because they're planning something, Crickstell argued. Humans always have hidden motives. Morrison turned back to face the room. You're right, we do have a hidden motive. The aliens tensed, some reaching for weapons that weren't there. We want to go home, Morrison said quietly. Not to Earth. That world died long ago. But we want to belong somewhere again. We're tired of hiding in the dark spaces between stars. Lieutenant Commander Grant entered the room and whispered something in Morrison's ear. His expression grew. Serious. What is it? Zethkar asked. My infiltration teams have found something on the Devourer ships. You're not going to like it. Morrison activated his holographic projector again. New images appeared, showing the inside of a Devourer vessel. The aliens gasped at what they saw. The ship's interior was lined with strange organic pods, each one containing what looked like a preserved alien brain. Not just consuming matter, Morrison explained. They're consuming consciousness itself. Every intelligent being they eat becomes part of their collective mind. Every civilization they destroy makes them smarter. Dr. Yildiz studied the images with horror. How many minds are in there? We estimate several billion, maybe more. Devourers have been doing this for a very long time. The room erupted in angry voices. Several representatives demanded immediate action, while others called for evacuation of all populated worlds. Morrison waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. There's more. My technical teams have analyzed their communication systems. The Devourers use quantum entanglement to share information instantly across their entire network. Every ship, every creature, every consumed mind is connected. Commander Chin's voice came over Morrison's communicator. Captain, we've got movement in the Devourer fleet. They're adapting to our tactics faster than expected. Morrison activated his wrist display, showing tactical information from the human fleet. They're learning from our attacks. In another few hours, our stealth advantage will be gone. He looked around the room at the alien representatives. This is your choice. Work with us now, or watch the galaxy die piece by piece. Zethkar stood up. What do you need from us? Full access to your military databases, command authority over joint operations, and a promise that when this is over, humanity will have a place in the new galaxy. Several aliens started to protest, but Morrison held up his hand. I know what you're thinking. You're wondering if we'll become the next threat after the Devourers are gone. Maybe you're right to worry. But right now, we're your only hope. Ambassador Crickstell was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated his own communicator. This is Crickstell to the Hegemony Council. I am authorizing Emergency Protocol 9. Full cooperation with human forces. One by one, the other representatives did the same. Dr. Yildiz was the last to speak. I propose Captain Morrison be given command of all anti-Devourer operations. All in favor. The vote was unanimous. Morrison nodded grimly. Signaled my fleet. We're going to war. 2 hours later, the first joint human-alien operation began. Major Sullivan's infiltration teams worked alongside alien commandos to plant bombs inside Devourer ships. Colonel Hayes led mixed squads of human marines and alien soldiers in direct assaults on enemy positions. The fighting was brutal. The Devourers had adapted to human stealth technology, making them visible again. But they hadn't expected the combined tactics of multiple species working together. Human precision mixed with alien creativity created new ways to fight that the Devourers couldn't predict. Commander Chen coordinated the technical assault, using human quantum disruptors to jam the Devourer communication network. For the first time since the war began, individual Devourer units were cut off from their collective mind, making them vulnerable and confused. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the remaining Devourer ships retreated from the system. Entirely, Zarian Prime was saved, though the planet would take decades to recover. In the aftermath, Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the mixed fleet of human and alien vessels. Lieutenant Commander Grant joined him at the window. "Think this partnership will work?" she asked. Morrison was quiet for a moment. "It has to, because what's coming next will make this battle look like a training exercise." "What do you mean?" Morrison activated a star chart showing the galaxy's outer rim. Red markers indicated Devourer. Positions spreading inward like an infection. We've been watching them for years. This attack on Zarian was just a probe. The real invasion is coming, and it's bigger than anything the galaxy has ever seen. Grant stared at the display.
How
long do we have? 6 months, maybe less. Morrison turned away from the window. Time to see if this galaxy is worth saving. The alarms on Kepler Station screamed through the corridors. Commander Zethkar ran to the command center where the main screen showed something that made his blood freeze. A massive shape was moving through space toward them, larger than anything he had ever seen. "Report," he demanded as he reached his station. Veltar's many arms worked frantically over his controls. "Long-range sensors detected it an hour ago. It's the size of a small moon, sir. Biomechanical construction, definitely Devourer origin." The thing grew larger as it approached. It looked like a giant insect made of metal and flesh, with countless arms reaching out in all directions. Energy crackled around it as it moved through space, bending the very fabric of reality. Captain Morrison appeared on the communication screen from his ship. Half of his face was grim with worry. "Commander, you need to evacuate the station immediately." "Oh, that's a world eater." "We've only seen them in deep space before." "What does it do?" Zethkar asked, though he feared the answer. "It eats entire star systems. Not just the planets. Everything. Stars, asteroids, even the space between them. When it's done, there's nothing left but empty void." The station shook as the World Eater's gravity field reached them. Equipment sparked and failed as the massive creature drew closer. In the distance, Zarian Prime's dying sun began to flicker as the World Eater's influence touched it. Morrison's expression grew harder. "We're out of time. The main Devourer fleet is coming behind the World Eater. This isn't just an attack anymore. It's the end." On the human ship USS Shadowhawk, Dr. Alina Rodriguez worked frantically in her laboratory. Around her, alien scientists and human technicians tried to understand the data she had gathered over months of fighting the Devourers. "The quantum network," she muttered to herself, checking calculations for the 100th time. "If we can disrupt it at the source, maybe we can blind them all at once." Lieutenant Commander Grant entered the lab. "Alina, the captain wants to know if your weapon is ready." Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her work. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, and her hands shook from too much stimulant medication. "It's ready, but there's a problem. Someone has to deliver it directly into the heart of the Devourer, collective consciousness." "What does that mean?" "The weapon needs to be placed inside the World Eater's central core. That means flying into the thing and finding the main consciousness node. It's a one-way trip." Grant stared at the device on the lab table. It looked simple, just a small metal box with glowing components inside. "How do we know it will work?" "We don't. The theory is sound, but we've never tested it on something this large. If it fails, whoever carries it will die for nothing." Morrison entered the lab, his enhanced hearing having picked up the conversation from the corridor. "How many people would we need for the mission?" "A small team. Be 5 or 6. The World Eater's interior will be heavily defended, and the environment inside will be toxic to most life forms." Morrison nodded slowly. "I'll lead the team." "Captain?" "No," Grant protested. "Send someone else. The fleet needs you." "The fleet needs someone they trust to carry this mission out. Besides, I've been inside Devourer vessels before. I know what to expect." Colonel Hayes' voice came over the communication system. "Captain, my Marines are ready for the suicide run." "Give us the target, and we'll make it count," Major Sullivan added her voice. "My infiltration teams can get inside anything, is what we trained for." Morrison activated the ship-wide communication system. All senior staff to the main briefing room. We have a mission to plan. An hour later, the briefing room was filled with the strangest gathering in galactic history. Human soldiers sat next to alien warriors. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers. They all studied the holographic display showing the World Eater's approach. The plan is simple, Morrison explained. We take a small force inside the World Eater and plant Dr. Rodriguez's weapon at its core. The rest of our fleets will keep the Devourer ships busy while we work. Commander Chen pointed to the tactical display. The World Eater's defenses are incredible. Energy shields, automated weapons, and thousands of smaller creatures protecting it. Getting inside will be nearly impossible. Not impossible, Sullivan? Corrected. Just very dangerous. My teams can create a distraction at one end while the main force enters from another direction. Dr. Yildiz, who had joined the human fleet as a medical advisor, studied the biological readings from the World Eater. The creature's interior will be filled with toxic gases and corrosive fluids. Even with protective suits, survival time will be limited. How long do we have once we're inside? Morrison asked. 30 minutes, maybe an hour if you're lucky. He leaned forward in his chair. That's not much time to find the core and plant the weapon. It's enough, Morrison said with certainty. We've done harder things with less time. Zethkar, who had evacuated to Morrison's ship when Kepler's station became too dangerous, spoke up. Captain, my people have prepared something that might help. Ancient star charts showing the location of an artifact in the galactic core. It might give us an advantage. What kind of artifact? We don't know. Our ancestors found it millions of years ago and decided it was too dangerous to study. But the legends say it can destroy anything that consumes consciousness. Morrison looked at the star charts. The galactic core was a dangerous place, filled with black holes and energy storms that could destroy any ship. But if there was a weapon there that could stop the Devourers permanently, it might be worth the risk. How long to reach the galactic core? 3 weeks with our fastest ships. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. The World Eater was only hours away, and the main Devourer fleet would arrive soon after. But if they could find this ancient weapon, they might be able to save more than just one star system. We split our forces, he decided. Half the fleet stays here to fight the World Eater. The other half comes with me to find this artifact. Grant stood up quickly. Jake, you can't do both missions. Choose one. Morrison looked around the room. At the faces of humans and aliens who had learned to trust each other despite their history, I choose both. Colonel Hayes will lead the World Eater mission. I'll take the artifact run. Hayes nodded grimly. Understood, sir. We'll buy you as much time as we can. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Ships were loaded with supplies, weapons were checked and rechecked, and final messages were recorded for families who might never see their loved ones again. As Morrison's ship prepared to leave for the galactic core, he stood in the docking bay watching Hayes' team load their assault craft. The Marine colonel approached him, his enhanced body moving with the deadly grace all the human soldiers had developed. Captain, if we don't make it back, ... You'll make it back, Morrison interrupted. You always do. Hayes smiled. And if you don't find this artifact? Morrison looked out at the approaching World Eater, now close enough to blot out entire sections of stars. Then we hope Dr. Rodriguez's weapon is enough. The two men shook hands, knowing it might be the last time they saw each other. Morrison's fleet jumped to hyperspace just as the World Eater reached the outer edge of the star system. Behind them, Hayes' forces prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. In the depths of space, ancient things began to stir as the human ships approached the galactic core. Some secrets were meant to stay buried, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. Colonel Hayes felt his assault craft shake as it entered the World Eater's outer defenses. Around him, his team of enhanced Marines checked their weapons one last time. The interior of the massive creature was dark and filled with a thick, poisonous atmosphere that would kill any normal human in seconds. 2 minutes to core insertion, called the pilot over the communication system. Through the craft's windows, Hayes could see the twisted corridors of flesh and metal that made up the World Eater's body. Strange lights pulsed along the walls like a giant heartbeat. Major. Sullivan's voice crackled through the radio from somewhere else inside the creature. Hayes, my teams have found the central chamber. It's bigger than we expected. The consciousness node is protected by thousands of smaller devourer creatures. Hayes activated his tactical display. The mission was simple in theory but nearly impossible in practice. They had to fight their way to the core, plant Dr. Rodriguez's quantum disruptor, and somehow escape before the explosion destroyed the entire World Eater. Understood, Sullivan. My Marines will clear you a path. The assault craft landed hard on a platform of living metal. Doors opened, and Hayes' team rushed out, their enhanced bodies moving with perfect coordination. The devourer creatures came at them immediately, flowing through the corridors like living liquid. Hayes' cybernetic arm transformed into a plasma cannon as he fired at the approaching enemies. His Marines spread out around him, their own enhanced weapons cutting through the alien defenders. But for every creature they destroyed, 2 more took its place. The core is 3 levels down, Sullivan reported, seeing massive energy readings. This thing is more powerful than we thought. Meanwhile, at the Galactic core, Captain Morrison's ship fought its way through storms of energy and gravity that could tear apart normal vessels. The ancient artifact was hidden somewhere in this chaos, protected by dangers that had kept it safe for millions of years. Captain, reported Commander Chen from his station, we're detecting something massive ahead. It's not natural. On the main screen, a structure appeared that defied understanding. It looked like a crystalline city floating in space, built around a star that burned with impossible colors. Energy flowed between the crystal formations in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Rodriguez studied the readings from her science station. The energy signatures matched the legends. This has to be it. Morrison's enhanced senses picked up something that made him pause. There's something alive in there, something old and powerful. Lieutenant Commander Grant looked at the readings with worry. Jake, this place feels wrong. Maybe we should reconsider. No time for second thoughts, Morrison replied. Hayes and his people are fighting for their lives. We need that artifact. Back inside the World Eater, Hayes' team had reached the 2nd level. The fighting was getting more intense as they moved deeper into the creature's body. Marines were using ammunition faster than expected, and their protective suits were beginning to fail in the toxic environment. Sullivan, what's your status? Hayes called into his radio. We've reached the core chamber. Hayes, you need to see this. Hayes activated his helmet display to share Sullivan's visual feed. What he saw made his enhanced heart skip a beat. The core chamber was enormous, filled with millions of brain-like structures floating in glowing fluid. Each one contained the consciousness of a devoured being, trapped forever in the Devourer collective. My God, whispered one of Hayes' Marines. How many civilizations are in there? Sullivan's voice was grim. Billions of minds, all connected. Hayes, I don't think we can destroy this. These are people, trapped but still alive. Hayes felt the weight of the decision crushing down on him. Dr. Rodriguez's weapon would destroy the quantum network. But it would also kill every consciousness trapped inside the core. Billions of innocent beings would die to save the galaxy. Plant the device, Sullivan. We don't have a choice. At the Galactic core, Morrison's team had entered the Crystal City. The corridors were filled with a strange energy that made their enhanced bodies feel heavy and slow. Ancient symbols covered the walls, glowing with soft light. Dr. Rodriguez used her scanner to trace the energy flows. The artifact is at the center of the structure. But Captain, these readings are off the charts. Whatever this thing is, it's more powerful than anything we've ever encountered. They reached the central chamber and found something unexpected. Instead of a weapon, they discovered a massive consciousness. Ancient beyond measure, sleeping in a crystal shell. The consciousness stirred as they approached. A voice filled their minds, speaking directly to their thoughts. Who disturbs the Guardian's rest? Morrison stepped forward, his cybernetic implants sparking from the mental contact. We are humans. Our galaxy is being consumed by creatures called Devourers. We need your help. The ancient mind touched Morrison's memories, seeing the war, the destruction, the billions of lives already lost. It also saw something else: humanity's choice to help the species that had once tried to destroy them. Interesting. Your species chooses compassion over revenge. This is rare. Will you help us? The Guardian was quiet for a long moment. The creatures you fight are refugees from my home galaxy. I failed to stop them there, and they consumed everything. But I learned something from that failure. Images filled Morrison's mind, showing the Devourers' origin. They had once been a peaceful species, forced to consume others only to survive a cosmic disaster that destroyed their world. Over millions of years, the desperate survival instinct had become an unstoppable hunger. They can be saved, the Guardian continued. But the cure requires sacrifice. One consciousness must join with their collective, guiding them back to what they once were. Morrison understood immediately. Want me to link with them? Not you. Someone who understands both sides of this war. Someone who has been enhanced to survive the process. Back in the World Eater, Hayes heard Morrison's voice. Over the radio explaining the Guardian's offer, the quantum disruptor was armed and ready, but now there was another choice. I'll do it, Morrison said through the communication link. I'll link with their collective. Captain, no, Grant protested. There has to be another way. Morrison looked. At his crew, people who had followed him through decades of exile and war, this is why we came back. Not for revenge, but to save people, even if those people are our enemies. Hayes's voice came through the radio from deep inside the World Eater. Sir, how do we make the connection? The Guardian's voice filled all their minds. The quantum disruptor can be modified. Instead of destroying the network, it will create a bridge. But the human consciousness that enters will be changed forever. Dr. Rodriguez worked frantically to reprogram the device. Jake, if you do this, you'll become part of their collective. You might lose yourself completely. Morrison smiled, the cybernetic parts of his face glowing brighter. Maybe I'll help them remember what they used to be. The connection was made. Morrison felt his consciousness expand, touching the billions of minds trapped in the Devourer collective. At first, the hunger was overwhelming, the desperate need to consume and survive that had driven them for so long. But Morrison brought something new to the collective, the memory of choice. He showed them humanity's decision to help instead of harm, to protect instead of destroy. Slowly, other voices joined his. Ancient Devourer minds that remembered their original purpose. The change spread through the network like wildfire. Across the galaxy, Devourer ships stopped their attacks. The World Eater's consumption ceased, and the creature began to transform its biomechanical structure, becoming something beautiful instead of terrifying. Hayes watched in amazement as the core chamber changed around him. The trapped consciousnesses were freed, their minds returning to peace after millions of years of forced connection. Ah! Morrison, are you still there? Hayes called into his radio. A voice answered, but it was different now, carrying the weight of billions of experiences. I'm here, Hayes. But I'm more than I was before. We all are. The Devourers became something new that day. No longer driven by endless hunger, they began to heal the worlds they had damaged. Their biotechnology, once used for consumption, became tools for restoration and growth. Morrison remained connected to their network, serving as a bridge between human understanding and alien experience. He was changed, transformed into something that was both human and devourer, but he retained the core of what made him who he was. Years later, Lieutenant Commander Grant stood on the observation deck of a space station orbiting a restored world. Her daughter played nearby, a child born in the new age of cooperation between species. The little girl carried genetic markers from her father's enhancements, but also something new, the ability to communicate directly with the transformed Devourers. Mommy, Uncle Morrison is talking to me again, the child said, looking up at the stars. Grant smiled and touched her daughter's hair. What does he say? He says there are new signals from far away. Other galaxies calling for help. He wants to know if we're ready to go help them. Grant looked out at the fleet of ships in orbit, vessels crewed by humans, aliens, and transformed. Devourers working together. Tell him yes. We're always ready to help. the depths of space, Morrison's expanded consciousness felt the message and shared it with his collective family.